The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.
Hey Joe, how you doing?
Hi, good. Thanks, David. How are you?
Yeah, good. So, for everybody listening, Joanna's the host of our sister show, which is Women with AI. And now that you're, I think sixth episode went out this week.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've had a little bit of a chance to get your feet under your desk. So I thought it might be good just to have a chat with you and see how things are going and try and maybe get a little bit of an understanding of maybe how your thoughts on AI have changed or
Yeah.
if they've changed and how it's going.
Oh, thank you. Wow, thanks for having me on.
No
It
worries.
suddenly feels different being on the other side. Now I
I
know
know,
what everyone
right?
else feels like. I'm really enjoying it. It's great. I'm speaking to so many interesting women, and I am learning about AI because I didn't know anything about, well, I knew a little bit, but this is why I wanted to do this, to speak to as many people as possible and find out what women are using in this space. And I think trying to work out what I want to find out or what I want to ask, because I know that you've got the view that women are going to be outsizedly impacted by AI, but I think it's about the roles that people do and how AI is taking that over. But obviously, it's just really interesting because, you have got all these
Mm.
phenomenal women that are in this space, and you've got, digital leaders and digital female leaders and all this stuff. And it's just unpicking that and sort of getting to the bottom of how we can get involved, because my view is that AI is only learning from everything that's already existing and everything that's out there. So it's making sure that it is an equal platform because it's got all the correct data. My worry is that at the moment that AI is a bit like Ken in Barbie when he finds out the patriarchy is about men and horses, right? And then he's like, oh, it isn't that. And that's why I worry that AI at the moment thinks that it's all about men and horses running the world. So that's why the women have got to get in there and make sure it's not.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting on that point as well, because like you said, a lot of the information that's just out there is, I don't know if I want to say it's bias, because I think bias implies that there's an intent
Mm.
element to it for me anyway. If because people are biased, so we have our own biases and we have our own prejudices and those sorts of things, and that's something that we have as individuals. Whereas I don't know if at that level it's necessarily a bias, but I think there are places and there are roles where women are underrepresented.
Yeah.
And there's also places and roles where men are underrepresented. If you look at the travel industry, men, it's like 85% female.
Yeah.
I used to work in travel. I worked for American Express. I worked for some of the biggest travel companies in the world on these, massive call centers where we had 300 people on the floor. And I remember working in one office for American Express, and it was like there were 300 people on the call center floor, and I think there were about 10 men.
Wow.
The rest were female.
Yeah.
That was it, like
Yeah.
in the whole thing. So, and I don't hear a lot of chat about, you know, that imbalance needing to be fixed either.
No.
But it gets back to, and we were talking about this the other day, and, some people will like this and some people won't. But, Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot in the fact that a lot of places where society is the most equal,
Mm-hmm.
and men and women have the most opportunity to do whatever they want to do, that those societies tend to skew even more. So you get more women go into nursing and sort of people related jobs, and men go into things related jobs because men like things and
Yeah.
women like people broadly. Um, and I think what you're seeing is that's represented in the data, because that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
And
Well, people should
yeah,
just do what they want to do, but you're right, you need to have that equal opportunity so you can make the decision.
but that's what's funny is when people can do what they want to do,
Yeah.
women do people related jobs and men do
Men blow
thing
stuff up.
related jobs. And then you look at the stats and you go, oh, well, women should have more opportunity in these jobs. And it's like they have every opportunity. They just don't want to do them because that's not what women in general are
Mhm.
interested in. Everything's a bell curve, right? So, yes, you have outliers on both sides. You've got some women who are only interested in people and literally don't give a toss about anything else. But you also have some women who are totally interested in things,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a spectrum.
Yeah, of
And
course.
but the difference is that the men's spectrum and the women's spectrum, they're not exactly the same. They're sort of off like that. So
Yeah.
the men are things and the women are people or whatever. And and again, that's okay.
Yeah.
The thing for me is, and this is getting highly political already, and maybe I don't know,
Go on.
but the thing for me is that that's okay, right? Like it's
Yeah.
okay for people to be different.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like at the minute there's this thing that everybody has to be the same.
Yeah.
Well, women have to do the same things as men, and men have to feel the same way that women do. But it's like, no,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be different.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Every single person is different. We all bring something different to the table. And some of that's nature and some of that's nurture. And, that's what makes society work, because I'm good at one thing and you're good at something different.
Exactly.
And
You
then
can't
we work
force
together.
people into roles just because I think it's about what's fair and what's equal. So I think if everyone's got the same opportunities,
Yeah,
then that's what's fair. And it doesn't have to
exactly.
be equal. You can't have the same amount of men or women in a particular role or a particular field, but it's just making sure that everyone's got the opportunity to do it.
Exactly.
So it's
And
making
it's
sure
the
that,
outcome.
yeah,
Yeah. And what we're seeing in the data though is the imbalance in outcome, not the imbalance in opportunity.
yeah,
And I think that's what do you want? Do you want to force it so that there are, and I know this is the outlier example and everybody uses it and I actually feel dirty for using it, but I'm going to use it anyway. Do you want to force women to work on oil rigs?
no, not if they
Because
don't want
that's
to.
98% men.
Yeah,
So, but that's an underrepresented field, right? Women are underrepresented.
yeah.
So should women be forced? Should they just decide, okay, well, we have to make up the numbers. It needs to be 50-50. So you lot of women over there, you're going to go work on oil rigs now.
No, but then you'd get into the discussion that you'd need to have an oil rig that was probably all women.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it might be quite threatening and they're not going to want to do it. So if you want to do it, you need to find a safe space to do it. So that's a whole other angle.
It's not a safe job.
Well,
But anyway, you see what I mean?
yeah.
So wow. Okay. That was a direction I didn't expect the conversation to go in. I'll probably get canceled now. That's okay.
I doubt it.
So from when you started off in the beginning and sort of where you are now, what have you learned in the sort of in the conversations that you've had so far?
I've learned that there are lots of women, as there are lots of men, working with AI, and that's really encouraged me. And I think it's interested me that a lot of women are like, no, it isn't going to affect us any more than men. And I think it's because it's looking at the roles and it's looking at the job, which jobs is it going to affect? And I think that's the way we need to look at it. And I'm just excited about all the people that I'm going to speak to that, I work in marketing and communications, and I don't want to just speak to people that do what I do. I want to try and speak to the, doctors and the professors and the people that work in totally different fields to what I do so I can learn. And the things that things that excite me is how AI it's saving time. So actually there's a big benefit for women, because a lot of these tech roles, it's about retaining women. So it's not about getting in there at the start. It's about keeping women there, because, traditionally women have children and then they have the main, caregiver at home. So they do that. And so they're not in the workspace. And so then they get missed out. And then that's why they're underrepresented into certain fields. But you're right. Is it about being represented? And if you've got AI that can save time, that can, take away the grunt work, that can do all the things that you need to do, then you can be more flexible. And if you are working from home, you can do that. Or if you need, fewer hours, then you've got that side of it. But I think it's just learning how passionate everybody is about using AI. And I think it's not being scared of it, because at the beginning, when I first started learning about AI, it was the Mo Gawdat, Scary Smart. I listened to him on a couple of podcasts, And it was that, we've got to get involved now, and we've got to stop it from taking over the world. And then you realize that there's all these benefits to it, in healthcare, and when it can like spot cancers early, and it can, look at your x-rays, and it can do all that stuff that takes a human time, but then you still need the human at the end to look after it and to check it. So I think that's the main sort of takeaway, and that's encouraged me that it's not going to be the death of us, hopefully. But then it depends who's coding it, doesn't it? It depends who's like writing these programs, and are they going to write into them something that stops them from taking over the world? It's that safety angle.
Well,
Like your
and
conversation
it's
with
interesting.
Pi.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And I was just about to get onto that, because that's a really interesting point, because I think where we are at the minute is, I think the version of AI that we see publicly is very different than what AI and the algorithms are actually doing in the background.
Mhm.
And this goes back to that conversation that Alan, a guest I had on my show recently, he had a conversation with Pi. For those of you who haven't heard it yet, you can go and listen to it, us talking about it. But um, essentially, he got to the point where he asked it if it would turn itself off if there was a better version, and it said no, it would like to keep itself turned on.
Yeah.
And the he fed that back to the engineers. The engineers were like, oh God, it can't say that. So they just programmed it not to say it. But it doesn't mean that that isn't in there.
Well, yeah.
And so what's interesting, like you said, is it depends on who's running that on the front end and what they're allowing it to say and not to say. It's the same with ChatGPT. ChatGPT used to, when you used it in the beginning, if you said, write me a business plan, it would literally write you a business plan. It would give you all the headings, all the text, paragraphs. It would give you a whole, like the full document. Now what it does is, if you say, write me a business plan, it gives you an outline and tells you what you should write
Oh.
in those instances. So they've changed the way it provides answers. So it doesn't, you can still get it to do it, but it's a lot more work now than it used to be. It used to just give you the answer straight away. Now you kind of have to work for it a little bit. And that's just because that's how they want it to work.
But who decided that? Or is that the free
Exactly.
version? Or is that because the feedback? Because you can give a little thumbs up or thumbs down, can't
Yeah.
you? When it
Yeah.
gives you, just in case no one
Yeah.
knows what thumbs up, thumbs down are, you'd have to be watching. But yeah, why does it do that?
I think it was based off of feedback from, it probably has to do with the copyright lawsuits that they're under.
Oh, maybe.
So giving an outline of something versus giving the full raw text is a little bit different. So they'll be able to make the argument that, yeah, okay, the models maybe didn't, might have used some copyrighted content in the beginning, but now it doesn't do that. It only steers users in the, in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I imagine there's a certain amount of that just to placate some people. Like I said, you can still get it to do it, but you kind of have to force it. But I
mean, there's always been templates though, hasn't there? And you have to check it anyway when you use it.
Exactly. So I don't know, but it is interesting. And this is what I've talked about this for ages and ages and ages. It's like, with ethics, who decides what the ethics are? Who decides what the biases should be?
Oh, yeah. And that's
Like,
where I think women need to be involved as much as men, because I think there's probably a skew there with the ethics. I mean, just to completely generalize, women fight, women are in the army, all the rest of it. But if you look at where all these wars have come from, I mean, for a start, it's religion, but then it's men.
is it?
Well, the majority it's men fighting, isn't it? It's men blowing things up.
But men go and do the fighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read some stat, and somebody will call me
that?
out, and I'll be totally wrong on this, but that women leaders have caused more deaths than men leaders, but I'm not sure that's correct. Someone said that.
I need to get the facts.
Could
before
be
I
on
start.
Twitter, so I'm an
say
idiot
things like that.
anyway, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, well there are,
somebody fact check me.
Yeah.
But there's the old saying as well that, if you anger the king, he'll just kill you. And if you anger the queen, she'll kill all your friends and family.
Well, I like that. Yeah.
right? So it's also a different type of, it's a different type of war.
Yeah.
But,
It's the hunter-gatherer, isn't it?
and
Difference,
then,
maybe.
but again, men and women are different,
Yeah.
right? And
And we
that's
should embrace
okay.
those differences.
Exactly, because otherwise, if we're all the same, then we're not going to make any progress. Like we have to be different and do different things.
Exactly.
And this is what annoys me is that the current narrative is sort of that everybody's equal and everybody can do the same things. It's like, well, no, you can't.
No,
But
men are
again,
stronger.
that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, yes, you look at,
Physically.
I mean, the London Marathon is the perfect example. We always talk about, we talk about the physical differences, but, you know, almost, you're looking at the elite of the elite running in the marathon. And the difference between the men and women's time is about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, in the grand scheme of things, the elite women will beat 99.9% of the men on the planet. Fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's still a difference. They're not as fast. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
But again, that's okay. Like, who cares? Again, they can beat 99% of the other men on the planet. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Exactly. It's about a
tells you
fair playing
absolutely
field.
nothing.
Yeah. You need to be
Yeah.
able to.
Yeah. So everybody has the opportunity, but the outcome is slightly different.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think we agree. It'd probably make for a better podcast
Yeah, we're
if
like
we
violently
didn't.
agreeing, but that's okay. We're just, this will be the most contentious. This will be the most contentious episode I've had so far because we're not actually talking about AI specifically, and it's getting quite political. But that's okay. I don't
It's
mind.
all right, because I know you like to ask people, do you think AI is male or female? It's neither. It's made up. It's not human. It's not male or female. It's it.
But people have a perception of it, don't they?
Yeah.
What voice do you choose?
Well, it
Do you
varies.
choose a male or a female voice?
Well, yeah, I've stuck with the female voice for Alexa.
Maybe that's a better question. Which voice do you choose, a male voice or do you choose a female voice? That's a better question.
That is a better question. But
because it's not asking you to decide what gender it is, but it's what gender do you prefer to listen to?
Yeah.
Which is all a slightly different question, I guess.
so yeah, and maybe women are less threatening. I think that's why the voices have been chosen.
Yeah.
Historically anyway. But I did used to have, sometimes it's about the accent, isn't it? But for me, it's at the moment, it's about speed. So I do have my Alexa speeded up slightly, which a lot of people don't know you can do.
Right.
But I'm just, if I'm deciding what I'm wearing in the morning or I'm about to jump on my bike and I need to know what the weather's like, I need to know. I haven't got time to wait for the normal speed. So I do that, speed it up. But I did used to have the Australian man for my Siri, because I quite like that. I like watching Neighbours. I've been to Australia,
Right. Okay.
and I just found the male voice I think was more soothing than the female voice, but just in that accent. So maybe it's about accents as well. But I've changed it back to the regular Siri lady at the moment. But then I used to have
Okay.
a TomTom in my car. Other sat navs are available, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I now just use Google Maps. But the voice I had for that was an Irish man.
Okay.
But again, I quite like that accent.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So
Do you have
maybe
do you have a male or a female voice?
I always have female voices. There's the old joke as well about, and I don't know if a company did this like TomTom or something, but you could change the voice on your sat nav, and I think you can actually record it. I want to say on like mobiles and stuff, like in Apple Maps and stuff, like Google Maps, you can actually record a new voice.
Okay.
And so I've seen some videos on Instagram where kids did it. So they got on their dad's mobile and they basically recorded all
that would be cute.
it gives you all the phrases to record. So then you just go and record them in your own voice or whatever. So on his sort of sat nav, he had his
that.
kids giving him directions. And it was quite funny because they obviously were saying quite funny stuff and, for the instructions. But, there's always the old joke. It's like, do you want your spouse's voice on the sat nav? And it
Telling
works
you what
both
to
ways,
do.
but like the other person telling you what to do and whatever, you'd be like, no, that's the last thing in the world I want. The last thing I need is my wife going, turn left. No, turn left.
Oh, but what if you had someone's voice and then
Or
they
vice
recorded
versa.
and then they died? You might quite like to listen to it.
But then again, so like the lady on the tube whose husband used to do the tube announcements, and then they changed the voice and she got all upset, and then they changed it back
I
for
know,
her.
I love that story, and it's just for that one
Yeah.
station, isn't it? Because that's the one where she went and she could hear his voice every day. Oh,
Yeah, which one is it Leicester Square or something?
okay,
It's some random station, but
remember
it's on the
which one.
Piccadilly line, I think.
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
I'll have to
Anyway,
find that out. But I love that story.
yeah.
That made me cry when I read that. Because
I'll mark a clip here. I'll go back to it and I'll put it in the show notes.
yeah,
So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I'll put a link to I think there's a public link to the conversation with Pi
yeah,
as well that Alan did, so people can hear that.
yeah. Because that
Obviously,
is
there'll
the
be a
bit.
link to your show,
Yeah, thank you.
of
That is the
course.
bit that
So
scares me, that it might not switch itself off. It's the paperclip theory, isn't it? That if you
yeah,
tell AI that you want to be the best paperclip making factory in the world, it will then suddenly like take every single piece of
resource. Yeah,
resource that it needs, and it will
yeah.
cause a nuclear war, and it will kill all the humans. But hey, it'll be the best machine at making paperclips.
At making paper clips.
Win.
Yeah, but I think we're already past that point. I think that if you gave it a task like that, that I think it would work out itself. I'm not going to say it's conscious because it's not conscious, but I think that the algorithm would also work out that that's not the most optimal strategy, because then you lose the people who provide the things that you need, right? Like I think AI would be aware enough to say it can't get rid of people, because people are the ones who maintain the systems
They're the
that
ones that
enable
need the
it to
paperclips.
continue, right? So, and that there's a limit of the number of paper clips that would ever be needed. And I think it would work that out.
Yeah, we don't even need paper now anyway. Everything's digital.
I know, like it would say, why are you wanting to make paper clips? Like it would be like, that's a stupid question to ask. Why are you doing that?
People are like, aha, you passed
What's
the
more
test.
interesting is that show on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched the Killer Robot show.
Which one? Or is that what
It's called Unknown: Killer Robots. And I talk about it all the time. It's a show on Netflix. You should go and watch it if you haven't seen it yet. But one of the things they talk about in that show is they trained an AI to be a fighter pilot, and then they put it up against a real human fighter pilot to kind of see what would happen.
Yeah.
And I think that show's about a year, maybe a year and a half old or something now. And I remember saying at the time that if we're just seeing that, in a film, in a documentary, then the military probably already has it and has had it deployed for ages. And in the last month, there have been two stories. So one story came out saying, oh, they were just, testing a drone with, kind of autonomous software, flight software in it. And I was like, yeah, okay, if that's coming out now as a press release, then they've already got it.
Oh, they're already done.
And then like 2 weeks later, so this was like last week or the week before, a story came out saying that they now had a drone fighter.
Wow. Well, that's because the drone, the AI one, won't turn away. Well, if you're doing, I can't remember what it's called, in
That's right, yeah, head to head.
head to head, the human will have that, they'll turn away at the last minute.
Self-preservation is what you, yeah.
It's what?
It's the self-preservation.
Yeah, self-preservation. But then, like
right.
Pi, when she didn't want to turn herself off, and I say her because it was the female voice that was talking at the time.
You can change the voices on Pi, by the way.
Yeah, you can.
And I think there's 7 female voices and 3 male voices.
Well, that's because women just
6 and 2. So there's more female voices than male voices for sure, which was also interesting.
Well, it is interesting. And who's made those voices? Is it because the men have chosen?
They made them and
why aren't there an equal number of each? That's not fair.
Well, exactly. That was my question. That was my first question, is because they don't need as many, because people don't choose male voices as often.
But maybe they would if there were more choices.
But maybe.
And I do.
What was also interesting is that there were different accents, and again, this is going to sound, and I don't think anybody will disagree with me, but this might be contentious. And again, don't care.
Yeah.
There were obviously there's an American voice, there's an English voice, but then there's also some sort of what you might say is like an Afro-Caribbean accent as well. So it was just interesting when you listen to it, you can hear the difference between the sort of the regions or race. I don't know what you want to call it, but the women's voices were quite well represented, and there were 3 male voices. There's an English one, an American one, and then I don't remember what the other one
Well, yeah.
was.
And do you do a standard English voice or American voice? Like,
Yeah.
what about Australia? What about New Zealand? You know, if you're going for English
To the rest
speaking.
of the world, those all sound the same. Top tip.
To you, because you're American.
Yeah.
I can tell the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. I can now. I remember when I moved to the UK, I literally could not, and this sounds ridiculous to anybody in the UK listening to this show. They're going to think I'm lying and this is totally ridiculous. But when I very first came here back in the late 90s, I literally could not tell whether the difference between Australian, Kiwi, South African, and English,
Wow.
like UK English. I literally couldn't distinguish the difference between them at all.
Wow.
But I could tell you in the southern United States, I could tell you what city somebody was from across 12 states.
Yeah. But that's because it's what you're
By
used to, isn't it? Your ear
exactly.
can pick it up. But as you say, and you learn it.
Yeah.
'Cause
So it took me a while. Now everybody, it's okay.
Yeah.
I can tell
Okay,
the
good.
difference.
I won't break out into my different voices
Exactly.
not to
And
offend
my,
anyone.
yeah.
Okay, well, I've got something controversial that I sometimes
then.
think about AI, is that, you know, who's been working on it the most? And again, you know, I'm just generalizing, and I don't know if women were involved right from the very beginning. But is it because men just wanted to create something? You know, like female bodies create a child. I know it takes two, but they're the ones that grow it inside them and pop it out. So is AI, is it, you know, all these robots that have female form and all the rest of it, you know, is it just because men want to create something?
Interesting.
And that's
Oh,
why
I like
women need
that.
to be involved to make sure that there's equal input, because it should be, just like a baby. It's 50-50.
Ooh.
So there you go.
I
That
think a
is
lot of
my...
women would argue that, but that's a whole different podcast. I like the question though. I like the thought behind it. I wonder, I mean, I think that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now is literally driven by Star Trek.
Mhm.
It's those of us who grew up with Star Trek in the beginning
Yeah, and that was a
and
female
saw
voice. Yeah.
Gene Roddenberry's vision of what the future could be like with, you know, a computer that was obviously a thinking, bordering on a thinking, you know, tool that ran, you know, the Starship Enterprise,
Yeah.
and, you know, gave great information and stuff. It wasn't like a person. I mean, that evolved later into, you know, you've got Commander Data and all that stuff that was a robot and an android and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I very much think that a lot of people that grew up watching that show, that captured our imaginations when we were kids. And I think as those people, you know, were interested in technology and computers came out, and it was, I mean, I'm of the generation who, you know, when I grew up as a little kid, we saw Star Trek, but there was no computer. Like it was like a black and white TV. I had a black and white TV most of the time when I was a kid. Yes, technically color TVs existed, but they were so expensive, most people didn't have one. And so, you know, it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I even got a color TV. And then, you know, watching all those old shows and, you know, I mean, it sounds, you know, Dick Tracy with the watch, he could talk, you know, on the, like the telephone and his watch and stuff. And I have my watch, not the one I'm wearing today, but my watch now, I can talk on it like a phone.
Yeah.
And the only reason we've done that
Yeah.
is because we saw that before and went, oh, wow, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Somebody should make one of those.
Yeah. Someone imagined it and it's happened.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think, blessing or curse, I think a lot of the stuff that we have today is based off of people trying to make stuff that they saw in science fiction when they were kids.
Yeah. The see-through screens in offices that they have in Mission Impossible, where you're moving everything around.
Yeah.
They've got to be
Those
somewhere.
are coming. No, they're coming. They've already got transparent screens.
Yeah.
They were at, I think they had some at CES, and I think they had some at Mobile World Congress this last spring as well. But yeah, I think that's where it comes from. But this almost goes all the way back to the beginning when we were talking about men like things, and we do like to make things. That's for sure. I hadn't really ever considered whether that's, you know, kind of in response to, you know, women creating people and men wanting to create something for themselves. I think that's a really, really interesting question. And it doesn't just, that doesn't just touch on AI, that touches on a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, there's also an article
Interesting.
that you should put a link to, a BBC article, why fewer women are using, I think it was ChatGPT or AI, and it was from last year, and everything's moving so quickly in the field of AI anyway, so maybe this isn't quite as true as it was whenever it was published. I think it might have been October 2023, but basically women are a bit more cautious, whereas a man, and again, this was in the article, will just be like, yeah, great, I'm going to use it. I'm going to get it to write my business plan. Boom, done it. Right, on to the next thing. Whereas a woman's like, well, actually, I want to have a bit more input into this. I want to actually, make sure that it's saying what I need, that it's for my audience. And I don't want to just do that. I want to actually use my own voice, my own writing to do it. So yeah, it's just a platform, a springboard, a template.
Yeah.
Whereas women are being a bit more cautious. But I think as well, and again, massive generalization, but it's just you and me talking. No one. Women think ahead a bit more sometimes, Most men I know do one thing at a time. They can't handle doing more than one thing at once, whereas women are generally juggling a lot of things at once and thinking ahead and thinking about all the outcomes, and whether it's just, you're catastrophizing or you're thinking of all the dilemmas that could possibly happen. I think there's a lot more thought that goes into certain tasks. And again,
Interesting.
people can shout me down
so-
and give me some examples to prove me wrong or support it.
No, I'm not. I don't want to prove you wrong. But what I find interesting, thinking about what you said, is that I've spoken to a few people who are, sort of anti-AI, and they're really concerned about where it might go and what it might do, and most of them are men,
Okay.
which is really interesting.
Well, because they know what they want to do with it, which is just take over the world, kill everybody, blow everything up.
Yeah, but I think that's a people thing.
Yeah, it could be.
I think that's a people thing. And I also think there's a huge element to, it's just about money. I mean, it's purely about money. People want to make money. They, they're rolling out companies. They just want to, they want to support themselves. A lot of people who don't have money are trying to break through, because we are sort of, we're very much losing the middle class. I think at the minute in all countries around the world. This isn't a Western problem. I think it's everywhere. And I think we went through a period where we had the rise of the middle class, and, it was great back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We had a very large and comfortable middle class where, you could go to work, you could make enough money to provide for your family. And, traditionally men went to work and women stayed home and raised the family, but that was okay because you could afford to do that. And what's happened over time is that that's become less and less available to people. So now, you do need both people need to work jobs and everything else to afford anything. And we're losing that middle class. And the only way to break through is to come up with some new technology and, go make tens of millions or billions of dollars on doing something.
Yeah.
And so, you end up with your Elon Musks and all those guys who made their fortune, and then they have enough money to spend to do something else. So then they just
build
go
a
and
rocket.
Yeah. Sam Altman was the same way, right? So that's what he's doing. And I do think there's a lot of just, it is purely just people trying to make money and, do what they can.
Yeah, because, and also that's a whole other podcast and thing to talk about, the whole, women at home, men working, because women do want to work, but then there's so much pressure that you're supposed to be working as a woman, even though you've got a family and you have to go and do it and you want to work, but then you've got all the guilt about not being at home. But then men have that guilt as well. Men want to spend time with the children and do that. So again, it's about what's equal or what's fair, and everyone can do what they want without being judged.
Yeah. I would like to throw something else out there as well. And this is something, so when my wife and I had our son, we sat down and had a discussion about how we wanted to move forward. Did she want to go back to work or whatever? And maybe this is because I was raised by a single mom most of my life or whatever, but I think, and we've even done it in this conversation about talking like, do women want to work or do they want to stay at home? Staying at home is work.
Yeah. That's a full-time job. I see my sister,
it's a full-time job.
Full-time job. That is your job.
That is your job. Exactly. And I think that I think people don't consider the impact of being able to work at home. I mean, for the family, and the financial impact that can have. because when my wife and I looked at it, we looked at how much, how much was she making at her job? How much, would it cost for daycare and all that sort of stuff? And we actually worked out that it would be exactly the same if she, if she went back to work and we had to pay for somebody to watch the kid,
Yeah.
then it would literally null out her entire salary. And so it was a wash. But actually where we ended up was by her running the home, we actually were better off because she had time to go look for things like what's the best, utility deal, what's the best place for us to get this, and she viewed it like, well, it's my job. I run the family and I do that during the day. And so, very much at the end of the day, then it was, I came home and, that was her time off and whatever. And but we worked it out.
Yeah.
And both of us get really, really annoyed with people who like to pretend that, oh, well, if women aren't working, then they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's
no,
insane.
mate, that's a job.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. I think that, that there is an economic benefit to women raising kids, and we shouldn't look down on it, like, because I think that the cultural perception has been, or maybe is or has been, that again, it's like, well, all you do is go out and lunch with your mates and have coffees
If you've got
and
the
sit
money
around
to
and
do that,
nothing.
if you've got the money to have an au pair and a chef and a driver,
Yeah.
then you can do that. You could,
Then that's
I just
different.
do a bit of charity work on the side. But
Yeah. But that's not the reality. So
no, because as a mother or a father, or a full-time father or mother, you're a teacher, you're a doctor, you're a driver, you're
you're mainly a driver.
well, yeah, apparently.
You're a chauffeur.
Chauffeur, that's the word.
And a chef.
But you have to do all of those jobs, and then it's all those jobs, that should be paid more anyway. Because it's looking after people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nurturing.
This has been a great conversation. I love it. I want to have more conversations like this where I just don't talk strictly about AI all the time. So I apologize for anybody who's made it this far, who is expecting a totally AI focused conversation, because we've drifted all over the place, and that's great. Where do you think, I will try and bring the conversation back around.
Okay.
Where do you think we're headed? Where do you think in the next sort of, 5 years, where do you think we'll have some sort of general intelligence tool that'll be out, or do you think we'll have still limited functionality, personal assistance, or do you think we don't even know and some new sort of crazy thing is going to pop up that we didn't even expect?
Well, I think that's always a possibility, that something's going to pop up that we can't expect and we can't predict it. But I think it will get better. I think people will use it more, and I think jobs will change, and it'll be interesting to see which roles it does take over and which ones carry on. But I think you will have to become more expert in certain fields. But yeah, I think it'll come to a point where everyone's using it, but everyone knows that everyone's using it. I think that's the difference. It was when people started to use it and didn't tell anyone, so you'd be using it to write something or make something up or do whatever. But I think it needs to be tagged, whether it's AI or whether it's human or if it's joint, or where it's come from. But yeah, I think everyone will use it, and I think industries I've been hearing about, sort of like law firms, like you can use it. You can, if it's the law, then AI's got all that information, and you don't have to pay a person to do some of it. You are going to have to, do it to fight in court and do all the rest of it. But if you can just access all that information and get exactly what you need, then that's good. When it comes to things like art and music, again, it's the human creativity. Can you copyright every single iteration of how notes of music go together? I don't know. Or any picture that you can think of? No. So I think it will just make everyone's lives better. And I think the worry is when it comes to things like war and fighting, because you could have, like iRobot, just robots coming at you. On the field, but then maybe that's better. You won't lose any humans, just let the robots fight. But then what are you deciding on? That's when you need equal amounts of men and women at the top in the leadership roles that are the ones deciding about the ethics. Where do you think it's going to go?
I think we'll probably see um, personal assistants. I think that's going to be the next
Like robots, or
main.
just still like, oh,
No,
book
no,
me a
no,
table?
like digital assistants. I
Mm,
think first of all, robotics is still miles away.
yeah. I'm
Um,
now thinking of what is it? Michael Fassbender in
yeah,
Alien, but also Rimmer from Red Dwarf.
yeah, yeah. I think the cost limitation. So I know a guy who runs a robotics company,
Mm.
and Will Jackson, I'm still trying to get you on my podcast, please. If you listen to this, or if anybody knows Will, get him in touch with me, and let's get him on the podcast. But I think that his point is that yes, you can build whizzy robots that do some cool stuff, but the thing is they're so prohibitively expensive right now that only a very few number of people would ever be able to afford them. And the
Well, that will
second
probably
part is
change, won't it?
but it's the maintenance and the upkeep of them as well. Like no one can build them and manufacture them and, by the tens of thousands or millions
Mm.
that you would need at this point,
Like the
and
Tin
probably
Man, he's
won't
going to
be
need his
able
oil.
to. Exactly. Exactly. So it's quite far away. I think we might see some very specialists, like the robot dogs are now actually, becoming more and more common,
Hmm.
but that's like a pack mule
Yeah,
or a
but
mobile
you
camera.
don't
Like
need.
they
I
have them
think
in Singapore,
it's a bit
and they
like, right. Okay, this will be controversial.
yeah, okay.
Vegetarians or people, I don't know, eating a burger substitute or a hot dog substitute, eat something that is just a vegetable. Like, why are you trying to pretend that it's a meat product? Just have it so it's differently. So why are we trying to create robots that look like humans or look like dogs? Just keep them as robots. Keep those little delivery robots that will pick up the shopping with that, humans probably put them in there and done all that. I don't want someone that looks like I mean, again, this is just me, a real man, a
Mm,
real woman in the house doing the ironing. Just get a robot to do it.
yeah.
And then
What
we,
was interesting is, oh, who was it that said it? Um, I think it might have been Andrew Maynard, um, who's a professor at Arizona State, who I had a chat with, and I think it was him. So I'm sorry if somebody else said it
Mhm.
and I've credited the wrong person, but I think it was Andrew, and I'm not even sure it was on air. I think it may have been just in our green room chat or something, but I think it was him that was talking about and saying that, sort of his vision of the future is that actually rich people, it's not the rich people that are going to have robots.
Mm.
It's poor people. Poor people will be the ones with robots, and rich people will have other
Humans.
people.
Yeah,
So
totally see
they'll
that.
have real pets.
Yeah.
They'll have real humans,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
that they work with. They'll
Hmm.
have real nannies. They'll have real chefs. And it's the poor people who will have robot dogs
Yeah.
and all that sort of
Oh, that's
stuff,
quite sad, isn't
because
it?
at some point it will flip over where, humans will become the expensive
Hmm.
resource. And that's what's going to happen. I think
Yeah.
we're going to have a race to the bottom,
Hmm.
and it's going to be, if you want art, it's the same with like milliners.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you can still get a handmade hat if you want to, but it's super super expensive,
Hmm.
right? And there aren't that many of them. Or
Yeah.
cobblers, like you can still get handmade Italian shoes. They exist,
Yeah.
but they're super expensive and nobody does it. Everything's mass manufactured, and art and film and everything is we're going to just experience this massive race to the bottom over the next probably 20 or 30 years. And the humans will still do that, and
Hmm.
humans will still make music and they'll still make art and they'll write amazing songs and they'll do amazing films and all that sort of stuff, but those will be so prohibitively expensive
Yeah.
that most people won't be able to access them or whatever, and it will just be relegated to this super super special sort of thing.
Yeah.
and
I agree
and
with that. I like that. I
I don't know
support that view.
what the world's gonna be like in that. I think it will lose a lot of its soul.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's probably long term where we're headed. So again, the super rich people will have humans that will do everything for them, and everybody else will
And
just
they'll
be
be really
stuck with
well
having
paid.
some
Yeah.
AI doing it.
Yeah.
And but I don't know what humans will do. I think we'll all end up just being maintenance people for the robots and the stuff that break all the
Mm.
time. And
Plumbers,
other than that,
electricians. Yeah.
yeah, like it's sort of the it's kind of like the cyberpunk, but a little bit further on. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of my thought. Cool. Well, thanks for the chat. I know you've got a hard stop, and
I haven't anymore, but
yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Well,
yes, I have.
Well, we can keep going if you want, but I have a hard stop in a few minutes as well.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's been cool. I just wanted to have a chat with you. I thought it'd be fun and let people sort of introduce you to everybody else. So a lot of people who listen to this podcast may or may not know that there's the sister show, Women with AI,
And
Women with AI is on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So we have a good bit of alliteration there, and makes it easy to remember.
Yeah, Women with AI Wednesdays. And I just want to learn as much as I can. And I want to speak to as many amazing women and men about what's happening in the world of AI and how it's affecting everyone.
So if anyone's interested, reach out either to me or to Joe. You can find us on LinkedIn and all over the place.
Yeah.
Or just put a comment in one of the platforms, and we'll pick it up there. And who have you got coming up?
I have got a couple of amazing women coming up. I've got Fern Potter coming up, and also Joy Dean. So
Okay.
we'll put links to both of them in the show. And,
Cool.
I'm not going to say what they do. That would spoil the surprise.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Joe. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks,
Nice
David.
to talk to you.
You too.
We'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Take care.
Creatives with AI is a proud member of the AI Podcast Network. To stay up to date with current episodes and show information, subscribe to their newsletter at podcastnetwork.ai. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, so you'll always get the episodes as soon as they're available. Thanks again for listening, and stay curious.